we were trying to find a way to expand the protected area of habitat for wildlife beyond the reserve, because there was a dispersal area that was historically part of the Mara ecosystem, and wildlife have been migrating in there for years. Now, with the increased human population, increased settlement, subdivision of land, fencing, alternative land use, the habitat for wildlife was disappearing rapidly. That was the first reason, was to try and expand the area of protected habitat. Secondly, the Maasai people who owned the land were not really benefiting from tourism. They'd been bypassed. They were really just sort of onlookers as the minibuses came in from all directions. Maybe some of them could be employed as tribal dancers or as askaris, but they weren't really participating greatly in tourism. In recent years, a guiding school was set up in order to train the Maasai to fit them to be guides in the reserve for visiting tourists. And we felt that by expanding into the conservancies, which were on land leased from the Maasai, we would be able to create jobs for the local people. And that indeed is what has happened. So that the Maasai had a twofold positive benefit from the conservancies. Firstly, rent from the land that they put into the conservancies, and secondly, employment opportunities as guides and drivers and as staff in the camps and as rangers in the conservancies.
I actually feel very much proud that I come from this area and I'm enjoying being part of the tribe and actually sharing the pleasure and the knowledge about all the wildlife within this area. And it's a great opportunity for me and for anyone who comes here to enjoy watching all the wildlife in the very exclusive setup, whereby you can have a variety of all different wildlife species in their very natural setting and in undisturbed state.
The conservancies created a new tourism product that enhanced the tourism offering that Kenya has compared with other countries with whom we are competing. You know, in Southern Africa, Botswana, South Africa, and other countries, Tanzania as well. Our conservancies offer a very exclusive wilderness opportunity so that visitors are able to see the animals without many other vehicles being present. And at the same time, the wildlife numbers have increased significantly. We have 150 lions in the 100,000 acres that form Olari, Motoroki, Nabosho and Olkinye conservancies, and Mara North Conservancy was set up to the north of the reserve as well, which has significant populations of lions and other animals. It's also created a safe haven for threatened and endangered wildlife. We have large herds of elephant within the conservancies now. And so for the tourist visitor, they're seeing wildlife in their natural setting, without other people present, and with excellent guiding from the Maasai guides who live here, whose land it is. They're extremely enthusiastic about the land, and they have great pleasure in taking visitors around to see it. And we're finding that the visitors really appreciate the experience of staying in small camps in an area where they see wildlife teeming, and they see it on their own.
On our way over, we saw almost every animal that we had hoped to see, and we saw it in the first couple of hours. We saw a herd of 27 elephants. It was just amazing.
The number one thing on our bucket list to do was to go on safari, and
so why not on our honeymoon?
Yeah, and doing research and through speaking with people, Kenya was the number one country to come and see it.
Those of us who've been engaged in tourism for many years are very, very sad to see the way in which it's declined in recent times, and we would all like to see it get back to where it should be. Firstly, it's tourism that pays for conservation. Without tourism, the national parks and reserves and the conservancies would have little chance of continuing, because the money to pay for them comes almost totally from the tourist visitors who are paying park fees and who are paying to stay in the camps and lodges and who are creating the employment by doing so. So we really need the tourism to help conservation. We also need tourism as an important sector of our economy. Kenya has built up a tourist industry over the years, and many other countries are using tourism as an important part of their economy. We have great attractions here. We have fantastic natural resources, beautiful landscape, we have people who are naturally hospitable, and we are not a very long way away from our key source markets. So we have many airlines flying into Nairobi, and we need to see tourism back so that we can keep our conservation going, and we can also create jobs and opportunities for Kenyans, and we can also see tourism acting in the way it does as a multiplier for the economy. Now, the first thing we need to do is to see our security addressed. The overseas visitors have a perception that Kenya is dangerous, and we need to address that because, as we all know, terrorism is a global threat. We can list many countries and many capital cities in the world where there have been terrorist attacks and where people have suffered as a result. In Kenya, we know that there are certain areas along the borders, the northern and eastern borders, where there is a security threat. The government is attempting to deal with it, but of course, let's remember, tourists don't go there. These areas that are under threat are not places where tourists frequent. And then, in terms of what action has been taken, I believe that the government has shown that it's taken security seriously. There have been a lot of enhancements and improvements have been made, and we need to let overseas visitors know that we still have very many tourists coming here who are having a wonderful time.
I feel just as safe as I do in Whistler.
I think people should know that this is what Kenya is. If you just look around, this is what it is.
Yeah,
animals and the people here are wonderful. We've just had the most amazing time.
Yeah, and feel extremely safe.
If you think about it, in the last 7 years, there have been over 1 million tourists from the UK. There are 1 million people in the UK now, which has always been our biggest source market, who've been to Kenya, and many of them would like to come back. We need to remind the overseas visitors that there is no advisory against flying to Nairobi and going on safari. And the thousands of visitors who are currently coming can attest to the fact that they felt very safe when they were on safari, they felt very well looked after, and that they all say there's no reason at all for other visitors not to come. I have a great belief in Kenya as a tourism destination. I think we have a fantastic range of attractions, and I think we need to make the most of them to help to build the country's economy and to take things further forward in terms of the conservation that we need to see happening to protect all the fantastic wildlife species we have in this country.